welcome to Pondy Litfest 2024. I have Anand Ranganathan with me
Hi,
on the sidelines. Anand, thank you so much for coming.
Such a
and
pleasure.
Finally, I get to talk to you one-on-one. So, Anand is a very well-read man, and often he cites how India is a wounded civilization, and that is, of course, a phrase borrowed by from V.S. Naipaul. So, Naipaul, many people are uncomfortable with his writing because he is so objectively critical. Some of you might think that he suffers from a complex because of which he interprets India in a certain way. But then I think if we are objective enough to look at our own assessment, we will be able to appreciate the man, his intentions are actually for India. So one of the observations that I had when I was reading through his books was that he talks of a very strong influence of Gandhian philosophy that has persisted post-independence. And he almost, the way he talks about the Gandhian influence on our psyche, sort of almost justifies what the economists call the Hindu rate of growth, that we were very fatalistic, we started accepting that, you know, the initiative within us was gone. But, you know, because we have so much hindsight today, I wanted you to nuance this a little bit and tell me how much of it was actually Nehruvian economics, the 5-year plan, the adaptation of the Soviet model, and how much of it is actually that we actually became a people in 1947 who did not dare to aspire.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much, Alo. Always a pleasure, especially speaking with you on the sidelines of PLF, which is an amazing lit event, not just a fest. As to the question that you asked, I think it's a mix of both. By the way, Naipaul was tremendously critical, not just of Gandhi, but of the way of life that Gandhi espoused. And he carried on that criticism even to Vinoba Bhave, if I'm not mistaken, he called him a fool. Because, and in that respect, I think he carried on that criticism or that critique from Ambedkar, you know, who called the village as a cesspool, and Gandhian, of course, wanted that kind of, he aspired, not just aspired, he wanted that idyll, you know, the village life, just spinning the charkha is enough, and, you know, all we want is to sustain ourselves through our own means, and no industrialization, nothing, no progress in that sense. And that, you know, in terms of its philosophy was, I think, catastrophic for the early India. You see, whenever a nation takes birth, I think it's the most joyous time, which is that it allows you, it's almost like the birth of a city, you know. So you can either reform, let's say, Delhi or Mumbai into a beautiful city, almost impossible, or you get the state to sanction a new city like Chandigarh. So you start with a blank slate, and it's beautiful, it's something, you know, so you have all the means to make something beautiful, to realize something that you have aspired for in terms of aesthetics, beauty, progress, economics, everything in all fields. And India was a bit like that, of course, you know, the churn of partition and everything. So it's not truly we starting from a blank slate, but you know, we choose the paths that we have. And in writing the constitution, Ambedkar, in fact, he wrote later about it. He was very particular why he did not insert the word socialism in our preamble. In fact, there's a beautiful paragraph of he explains why he didn't. Of course, Indira Gandhi later did during the emergency. The point I'm trying to make is that when you're starting from the blocks, you need to be supremely confident, logical, rational. You know, you don't need to hark on something which the communists always hark on, you know, this utopia. Gandhi's vision was utopia, and Naipaul's critique was anti this utopia, you know. So in many ways, and Nehru, of course, was a disciple of Gandhi, and as you know, apple never falls very far from from the tree, especially a rotten apple. No need to pluck it; just falls on its own. So we blundered on from the moment we were born.
Correct.
You know, it's very difficult to unlearn and then learn again.
True.
It's one of those things.
So one of the the descriptions that I saw, and one of the terms that he used is intermediate technology. That we are a poor country, we do not have to aspire high. Something that Alok, who spoke yesterday on Space, also says, that how much of affordability do we have to really, how much can we gaze at the stars considering the fact that we are a poor nation. So, but in that he actually describes a particular mindset, and that is, I laughed as much as I cried. He talks about the bullock cart. The bullock
Yes.
cart being elementary to farming.
Yes.
And it's not that it's a very cheap implement either. But in order to modernize, the thought process even in design schools
Yes.
was to improve the bullock cart
Yes.
and not move to
Beautiful.
the engine. So this is a mindset, and I
Yes.
think it's brilliant.
It's
and
brilliant,
I think you're the best person, because you're in science, to tell us how this mindset has played us.
And the influence Naipaul has had on me and many others who've admire and are in awe of his incisiveness.
Exactly.
And the beauty aesthetics of wrenching out something, plucking it,
Correct.
and expressing it in the most beautiful collection of words that make a sentence. So I read that book 20 years ago, possibly more, 24 years ago. And the moment you describe it, it's as fresh.
That's true.
As in fact, I remember those couple of pages. So he's gone to National Institute of Design, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's right.
And ironically, NID was started by two of the most iconic designers, Eames, of the famous Lachaise, Eames design. I have that thing where I'm absolutely enamored by architecture, and so if you look at Lachaise, I don't know how the French pronounce it, but I think the chair, Lachaise, the lounge. Lachaise,
Okay.
pardon me, yes. You can edit it out, or...
No, it's fine. In English, you're allowed to pronounce the word as in
absolutely.
English.
And I hate the French. For years, I used to call that tennis player as Guy Forget. Sell stories G for G. Kaan ke niche lagao. But the idea was great, but it's not the idea; it's the implementation. The implementation, as you correctly said, was to transport the bullock cart to a space age.
Exactly.
That's the thinking. And next to that passage, it's just flooding back as another kind of quote-unquote machine that India developed was to have some kind of attachment. You can attach a sickle to your feet. Do you remember that?
Correct.
So there is this guy, and Naipaul describes it. It is perhaps only twice has he used an exclamation mark in all his writings. I can't, and that is one. So there you have this kind of a trap where you attach a sickle to your legs for harvesting. Absolutely rudimentary, and Naipaul is kind of mocking and says a sickle dance! Exclamation mark. That's the kind of technology that we said we should be so overjoyed and pleased about.
Exactly.
That was the era where Kennedy said we will take man to the moon and bring him back.
Yes.
So we've constantly, I don't know, this idyll that, we'll spin charkha and, what matters is high thinking, high philosophies, is ruined us. For a long time it ruined us. It ruined the human capital,
Yeah. The other image and the other series of pages is him trying to get his license for the 2 bottles of liquor that he comes in. So the pillar to pose, and the thing is that, as much as I really appreciate that the passport making process in India is finally Shastri Bhavan of Chennai. I don't know if any of you. Yeah. But the fact is that we still have that mindset.
Yeah.
We still have the mindset of, I'm the clerk and this is all I can do,
domain,
and all is that your paper has to go from one table to the other, but this man won't do it because that is not my job. You have the typist it's a mindset actually. So that I want you to elaborate on this mindset.
You know, you can look at another way. If each one of those people who've been designated a job all through that company line were to do their job to the best of their ability, I have no problem in that.
That's true.
You know, so rather than one person doing 4 or 5 jobs, being very good at it, that's exceptional and that's rare. You delegate something. The problem is the person whose job it is to do his job is not doing that job.
Correct.
You know, we are good at collateral thinking, not lateral thinking. We think collaterally, and it's amazing how fresh Naipaul's writing is even today. 60 years has gone. I think an area of darkness was 1960s, mid 60s. Correct. Then wounded civilization was early 70s, mid 70s. And then
Million Splendids.
That was 90.
That is
Million Mutinies now, 90. Shiv Sena, birth of Shiv Sena. It's amazing at that point of time how he predicted what the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years are going to be. It's uncanny. You know, I mean, the guy, and it's just, his thing would be quietly, he would go to a place all alone. Later on we learned, I mean, he went to a lot of places with his mistress by the side as well, Argentinian. But the perception, the ability to catch the nub of the issue, is just, it's rarest of the rare.
Yeah, the other criticism that I read some of his books and then also read the critiques of his books to understand the perception. And one of the things that you see is that, you know, he did not really understand. You know, he was anti-ritual, but he did not understand the value that he spoke from an inferiority complex of being a Westerner. He wanted to shed his brown skin more than, you know. But actually, if you just remove that, when he talks about, and I know that Swachh Bharat has come to India, but I also know this, that toilet is not it. We are actually even today littering our road. What Swachh Bharat is doing has not changed our habits. It has employed people to continue to collect our litter. So I actually want all of us to reread his description of squalor.
Yes.
And not feel self-conscious about it, not feel that he has hated us and therefore he writes from a perspective of hate. So can you talk about the fact that we, somewhere the sense of, you know, I know you're a man of fine taste, this lack of aesthetics, the lack of the sheer ugliness with which we'd go about doing things. So I want you to, because I think it's a very good point he makes and which is valid even to this day.
Yes, so there's 2 ways one can approach it. One is the grand philosophy of the scheme of things, right?
Yes.
And the other is, well, what is it you want to do in life, right? Do you want to lead your life, and do you want your fellow human beings to lead a life that is more comfortable than what it was yesterday? Which means that you will always strive for progress, you will strive for improving everything, right?
Yes.
You want a better pen, you want a better car, you want a better plane, everything. You want a better medicine, right? The other thing is that it doesn't matter, right? We are all Sisyphuses, we're pushing a rock and the rock will tumble down by the evening, and the next morning we will do exactly the same thing and again and again and again. It all matters on the perspective. But human inclination is to make our lives as comfortable as possible.
Correct.
Right? Otherwise, you would have renounced this world the moment you were able to think. You know, you reached an age where you could actually think out of the box or philosophically or whatever, 15, 16, 17. You'll say, I don't need to live anymore. As Camus said, the only philosophical problem remaining is that of suicide.
Correct.
It's absolutely true. The question of aesthetics can be divided in these 2 things. Is it worth pining for, you know, aesthetic taste, a beautifully crafted sari or a house or a beautiful looking building, or you just live in a matchbox or in a slum where also you will get sleep, where also you will wake up and do or push a rock? So it's a mind game.
You know why this mind game is important to point out is because you have people who are in the job of excellence, who really appreciate the Indian faculty of Jugaad. And Jugaad is not better. There is a certain native intelligence used, but if you're not really making it better, but you're just make do, but then you're glorifying that make do, that patchwork. I think we have glorified our capacity to do this patchwork and carry on.
Yeah. So I think the whole nation, of course, it is always dangerous to generalize, leave alone a collection of a community, a city, a country. True. But, I think generalizations or stereotypings also have their place. They make people stop and think. It's a national psyche, otherwise people wouldn't do it,
Correct.
So of course there are Germans who have great sense of humor, but still you say, Brits have sense of humor, Germans don't.
Correct.
Italians love. So generalizations happen. It'll be wrong to say people don't. They're generalizing all the time, So I would like to believe that we shut our eyes to everything that's crumbling around us. You go to Varanasi, even yesterday we were having a discussion. People have shut their eyes as to how non-aesthetic, how ugly, how crumbling, how overcrowded the city is. Even today, they've been marked improvement in the last 10 years, no doubt about it, but still, what they remember is, what is the city known for? What did it stand for?
Exactly.
So we shut our eyes to the physical. We go into the metaphysical and the spiritual, which is a way of looking, which means that we don't give a toss about how ugly the building is, what we are wearing. So the problem comes when you start criticizing the person who loves beauty, who loves to wear proper clothes, or likes the nice things in life. So, and that kind of seeds this complex.
I would like to think that we have become like that because, when you look at, looking at our old temples, in fact, Pondicherry is a very
Naipaul, good... sorry to interrupt, talks about it, when he says that we've become this ugly in terms of architecture, in terms of our skills, is because Vijayanagara was destroyed in wounded civilization. He says, why have we become like this? As I was saying, you can be an ostrich, you can shut your eyes to the filth around you. It's, I have written about this, in fact, in Rat Eater.
In fact, I asked you a question as I was reading. How much of that squalor that you describe is actually in the Rat Eater is inspired by... It is Naipaul somewhere whispering something in your ear.
I mean, of course, you've... and I can't remember, was it the acknowledgements in the Rat Eater or the first book that I wrote that I've thanked, because as a novice, naive writer whose profession it wasn't, I was like an Eklavya, lost. I didn't have any guru. The only gurus I had were people like Naipaul and Kapuczynski and others. So I've learned a lot of them. So obviously I think the writing, the rhythm of the sentences, the beauty of the language, that it must come out. Whatever little I feel as a writer I am is because of learning from them. But coming back to this, we believe the physical around us is like a shirt that we put on. So in many ways one is inspired by what one reads, and as I said, Eklavya, I'm Eklavya. But coming back to this thing about poverty, if you were to take the philosophical line and disregard the physical aspect of it, we extend it to everyone around us, and I think that's bad. We don't give choice to a person. You might ignore the ugliness, the physical attributes all around you, the city being a hellhole, you know, and you might think of the philosophical aspect of, look, what the city stood for, why was it created, Mahakal ki, you know, only concentrate on that. It's your choice. Why are you restricting, giving that choice to everyone else?
Absolutely. And not only that, it's what is hypocritical is that we have enough and more in our spiritual texts about Lakshmi, about cleanliness,
Precisely.
about order.
And please remember that we have cities within a city. If every place in the city was as ugly as every other place, I wouldn't mind, honestly. You know, what infuriates me is the people who have restricted that choice, denied that choice to us. They are living in an idyll.
Correct.
You know, they are living in Lutyens, Delhi, and everyone else around is living in an absolute hellhole. They don't experience that hellhole.
That's true.
If they did, I would be absolutely fine with it. यार, everyone is in the same boat. चलो यार, कुछ और सोचते हैं. गुस्सा तब आता है when their roads don't have a single pothole.
Correct.
When their boulevards are beautifully treated. And I've written about this. I said the last chapter of The Rat Eater. What should be, and it's very unusual, Delhi is very unusual. I said what should be the suburbs is actually the heart of the city. You know, you go to downtown, any city, it's crowded, it's got skyscrapers, buildings, or you go to downtown Delhi, central Delhi, it's the most beautiful area of any city around the world, you know. And it's so exclusive. Of course,
Yes.
Indians weren't allowed to be there, but now the brown sahibs have taken over.
Correct.
If Lutyens Delhi did not exist, I would love Delhi. Because everyone's in the same boat,
Yes.
everyone is forced to think away from the ugliness.
Correct.
What I hate is that these politicians have forced us to live in ugliness,
Correct.
crumbling infrastructure, horribly looking buildings, you know, non-existent roads, traffic jam, broken down law and order, and suddenly you find in that small idyll, a couple of square kilometers, you find, you know, Scandinavia inside Delhi.
You made an extremely beautiful, subtle point that I hope people are going to catch it in exactly the way you're trying to say it. And also, so just to wind up, because you have a session.
Yes.
He himself is an avowed atheist, much like you. You were there in the session yesterday where Vishnu Jain spoke.
Yes.
So there is a certain, I understand that there is a certain value in regular ritualistic practice.
Yeah.
But where do you think that comes in the way of us actually regaining the actual knowledge systems and spiritual heritage that we have? And what purpose does it serve? Is this ritual, is this sort of latching us on, we are latched on to this, and is it that actually prevents us from thinking better for ourselves outside, externally? Are we latching on to this?
So that's a very interesting question. And that can be answered in a couple of ways. One is, are we doing it subconsciously or are we doing it with intent? You know, if we are doing it subconsciously, then I think it doesn't hinder at all. To give you an example, you have the chairman of ISRO. ISRO is doing spectacularly well. You have our lunar missions, solar missions, everything, you know. And before every mission, he goes to Tirupati.
Yes.
I hope he doesn't consume the laddu there. So you can say, Arey, and people did say, look at this guy, he's a scientist and he believes in, you know, at Tirupati is going for prayers and, you know, there's that. It doesn't affect. They are exclusive. You can still be you can do brilliant science to the level of genius and yet believe in God, believe in rituals. Ramanujan said,
Yes.
all my formulas come on the tip of my tongue and they are put there by my goddess. You know, you had Bharat Ratna APJ Kalam, who said the best ideas I get is after my morning prayers, the namaz in the morning. So you had, for example, the inventor of the MRI believing that the earth was created in 6 days and God rested on the 7th. It's mutually exclusive. The problem is doing science and being a scientist are two different things. Mm-hmm. You know, if you believe that you are a scientist philosophically, then you have to believe in what Hubble discovery is. You have to believe in Darwinian theory of evolution. You know? But you can do science even if you believe you're a scientist. What I have anointed what a scientist is, of course, the chairman of ISRO obviously believes he's a scientist, and I'm sure that it's up to him. But science is much more than science. It's philosophy. That's the first thing that I tell my students. Who are you? And all 20 of them get up, we are scientists. I said, no. I said, no, we are. I said, what's the degree you're going to get? PhD. What's the full form of PhD?
Yes.
Is it Doctor of Science? It's philosophy. If you are a philosopher, then it's a different plane. But if you're doing science, you can be a brilliant, genius scientist and yet believe in rituals and believe in religion. And I'm absolutely fine with that. I'm not a militant atheist at all.
The beauty about talking to Anand is that you will always rise with your answers from the mundane and the expected. And I love this philosophical aspect in you. That's why I call you the poet scientist. So Anand, thank you very much. It's not been long, but it's been precious. It's a nugget that I will cherish. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Alo.
Thank you so much.